I have no idea which one of these is the mic. Let's go with that. Okay, I've had a change of plans for the content this week, as you can see. Before I get into content, there's significantly fewer of you in this room now. How are people finding the course? Okay, so mostly positive. I heard extremely difficult. Did I hear anything else?
Too much paperwork.
Too much paperwork? I mean, it's all online. I haven't seen a single paper. Yeah, whoever did the shredding activities probably had too much paperwork. Anyone from this side, do you have comments about the course? Or more, I should rephrase, how can we improve it? Because every year we get to the end of the course and we do a my experience and Richard does a debrief and things like that. And it's all well and good. And it helps improve the course for next year, but you're doing it now. And so how can I improve the course for you now so that you get a better educational process during the term? Yes?
Would the weekly activities be available at the start of the week so that we can work on it earlier and not on the weekend?
Yes, that would be good. I believe when Richard posts the weekly activities this week, he'll push a couple of deadlines back a little bit just to make it a bit easier on you guys. I don't think it's fair to have only a 5-day turnaround. So yeah, absolutely. We're working on it. There's some teething issues with the LMS that we're using. There's just a couple of things have to be moved around and done. And Richard needs approval. Richard's time is tight. So to make up for the fact that the weekly activities are a little bit late, we'll push a couple of deadlines, but all of that will be clear when they launch. Yes, hopefully that's not a consistent thing that happens through the term. I am pushing Richard several times a day to make sure those are out, but we'll go from as we do. Anything else?
Could we eventually get like example solutions on how to do the war game stuff?
Example solutions on how to do the war game stuff. I can do some example solutions for some of the easier questions. I don't want to give away answers to things like RCE because I want you guys to talk to each other and learn off each other. In the same way that the community is embracing it in the lectures on Monday and Tuesdays, I want you guys to talk to each other. That does mean that there is a bit of a burden and reputation for those who have solved those challenges. You'll have to explain how you did it and give a little bit of a breakdown. But I think it's better learning from people who have done it very recently as opposed to me who couldn't get them up in time, let alone working. So I can do some demo solutions and I can walk through some things. They won't happen this week, won't happen next week, but by week 4, I can probably jump back a couple of weeks and do some demonstrations so that you've actually got the skills when you go into the next courses. Yeah?
Is there any chance we can get these lecture slides right before the lecture starts? Or so it's easy?
What? So you can teach yourself off the slides and not pay attention?
Oh, no. I want to pay attention. Sometimes it goes fast. I want to complete those things.
The professional answer is no, I want you guys paying attention and engaging in the lecture content. The real answer is some of these slides usually aren't ready until about 5 minutes before the lecture. So it'd be great to send them out, but also I'm editing these on the fly. So yes, at least the demos, the challenges will be out in a relatively good time this week. What about overall in the course? Is there anything I can help to push Richard to do? How are the Monday, Tuesday lectures? Yeah? A forum like Ed would be better than the wiki. Are you using the Contact Us page?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's... Okay. It's a discussion we had internally. This mimics what we've done in the past. I don't mind using Ed, but I do mind changing things halfway through. So I think if there's enough of a consensus, we might be able to open it up, but I don't want to promise anything. Right now, the best way to get in contact is the Contact Us page and via email through the CS6441 account. The other thing is we've had complaints in the past where blogging was done here, logbooks were submitted here, security everywhere was over here, and people just went there's too many things. There's too many things I need to sign up for. So I'm hoping to sort of consolidate everything onto WebCMS and then just use Moodle because we've seen the issues with WebCMS. I'm not saying no, giving some reasons. I think if you want EdSTEM that badly, then petition Richard on Monday and make it very clear that it would be a net benefit for you. Yeah?
I think to piggyback off the EdSTEM statement, you said that
Ed would do that more effectively? Okay, I'll keep a note of that. Sorry, we're doing it live. I ask questions because I genuinely care about the answers, not because it's, yeah. Cool. There was another hand down here.
The weekly activities is quite confused. Like for example, for this week, I'm not sure what to put in the logbooks and what.
Well, it doesn't help that the weekly activities haven't opened yet.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of things like the case study prep and.
I mean, realistically, put everything in your wiki. In your logbook presentation at the end, put everything there. Because they are only links to the blogs that you've already written. And you should be writing a blog for basically everything that you do in the course. It doesn't need to be extensive. If it fits in a tweet, it's fine. Actually, if it fits in a small tweet, like 140 characters as opposed to 280, then it's still probably fine. I expect to see some more in-depth stuff when you talk about analysis, about how I approached a case study, what happened in the lectures, that sort of thing. But for most of the stuff that you're doing, it doesn't need to be sophisticated. It just needs to be something so that when you go back on it in week 10 and have a look at what you did and what you achieved, that you've got answers and can make sense of it. So short answer there, put everything in your blogs, in your logbook, and all the blogs that you do about everything, they don't have to be super extensive. Be better if they were, but they don't have to be. Every year we get people burn out because they want to do absolutely every activity and then write 1,000 words on each of them. And it's like, yeah, no wonder. Okay, I'll get into some content.
How many activities do you need to get the excellent mark?
Oh, that's hard to answer directly. We expect a high level of achievement in each of the 4 categories to be able to get an excellent mark in the logbooks. You get what you put into this course. So the more work you put into it, especially in terms of analysis, the higher the mark will be. That said, if the bar of the course is down here, I don't want just one person getting excellent and everybody else getting passes. So it's sort of, I don't want to say it scales completely because we do have objective standards that the tutors are marking against, and there is a example there, but tutors have the flexibility to mark easier and give people more marks. So I think if you're looking for direct answers, talk to your tutor, see what they're expecting, and see how you can work with them to present something in the best light. Yeah, last one.
What time and date will the CTFs be released each week?
When they're ready to go. Yeah, I know it's a cop-out answer, but I've actually got a slide here ready for you for exactly that. When you're writing software, it's very easy to make something that's completely vulnerable, right? It's actually really easy to just introduce vulnerabilities accidentally. It's also really easy to make something relatively secure. Like with a lot of the libraries and the frameworks and things that we're using these days, you can write code and just go by the documentation, and a lot of the time it will be pretty good. It's really, really difficult to make something vulnerable in one specific way so that it's only vulnerable in that way, and somebody who breaks it doesn't then be able to DOS the entire challenge set. So there's, as you would have seen in some of the challenges, it's an ongoing process. I'm releasing them as soon as I have them and I have a level of confidence that I think people are able to solve it without interfering with others. Today's are ready to go already. All I need to do is make them visible. So it'll be a week-by-week thing, depending on how sophisticated the content. I can promise you format strings will take me longer, whereas SQLi and XSS stuff will be open relatively soon. I'm just hoping that it's in a solvable state, unlike people spending 10 hours on unsolvable problems and crying. If you do have any comments, any recommendations, like anything you think would help improve the course, please email us or put it in the Contact Us page. We do treat it really seriously. Richard's always looking for ways to improve the course. And again, there's no point telling us in my experience at the end of the term. I want to help you guys learn now, not the next cohort. I mean, I do want to help the next cohort, but I want to help you guys now. Yeah.
Probably a minor thing, but maybe leave like hints for the challenges. Like if you can't solve this at all, then here's your.
There are some hints. The title of the challenges are usually a good hint. and there are hints in the description. If you do think there are more hints, again, if enough people tell me, hey, this is completely unsolvable, I just like no idea where to approach this, then I can keep adding more. Caveat, if you care about the score on the scoreboard, the hints that I add that will be a manual press will remove from your score. So if you utilize the hints, you can't get full points there.
Can't someone just make 2 accounts?
Sorry?
Can't someone just make 2 accounts?
Can't someone make 2 accounts? I like the way you're thinking with the security mindset. Your accounts are authenticated against your ZID. So hopefully not. And I can hear people whispering around how to get around that. I don't want to know. All right. This is a page on WebCMS at the moment, the security conference that we've got going. It is in the Thursday of week 4, so 2 weeks from now. It will run all day. It's going to be amazing. We ran this last year for the first time since the pandemic, and it popped off in a way that we really didn't think it could with such a tight turnaround and the people that we had there. Adam Smallhorn is incredible. Kristen Smith is just as incredible. But this year we've got some interesting names. Some people might recognize this person. The Gonski guy, yes. David Gonski is the Chancellor of UNSW. He was also the name brand as to why the Gonski reforms were an educational revamp that happened through the Gillard government. Effectively, they went and consulted as many educational professionals that they could find and developed a framework for building courses to make education the most accessible and effective way possible. And it lasted a good 2 years before that government was voted out. Because, of course, we can't have a good thing if it was made by the other side. So it'd be an amazing opportunity to hear this person talk. There's a little bio for you. Director of secEDU, you might know this guy. Again, amazing opportunity to hear them talk. You might not know, but they're a very incredible speaker and very engaging at delivering content. Yes?
On the sidebar in WebCMS, that secEDU conference link doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
For a free I can't access this page.
Oh, let me fix that.
It did open. Supposedly the form to submit our posters.
It is there. It is ready. I have it on my screen. Works on my machine, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Viewable by students. That would help. Okay, it should be viewable for you now. Take a sec. Don't all go to there at once because WebCMS is being DDoSed as we speak. So just settle down just a sec. What I will do is I can put it up here because one thing we offer because you're part of the course is a student discount. When you go to purchase tickets, and yes, they are purchase tickets, the venue is not free, you can get $10 tickets as opposed to $40 tickets with that code. So please utilize the code. And if you've already got a ticket, get in touch with secEDU, and we can refund you the difference between those. Or actually, we'll probably refund one ticket so you can buy another with a cheaper discount. But $10 tickets means that anyone who's a student is going to be able to get access at a very low cost. It's like almost as cheap as a cup of coffee these days. And there will be other industry professionals there. If I go back to here. Cool, keynote speakers, Andrew Pade, Dan Kennedy, Chris Gatford, Keith Howard, Richard Johnson's back. Oh, Monica's coming up. Damien Jerd. So, oh, Nigel's coming up as well. There are some incredible names here. There are professors from all the way across the country, people who are brilliant academics, people who are brilliant teachers, people from industry. There will be people there from places like Google and Atlassian that will want to offer internships, and you'll get to ask questions about how do I make myself stand out from the crowd there. So I think, if nothing else, it's an incredible experience just to sit and learn by osmosis. By just being near these sorts of people. Question? It runs all day. It runs from 9 a.m. till 4 or 6 p.m. or something. If you've got a shoot, you can bounce up to your shoot, do your case study, and then head back in. Yeah. You won't need a stamp or anything. Like, as soon as you're in, that's fine. And then, yeah, I hope everybody goes because I expect you all to be here that night. Okay, so that's that. Shout out to the people, oh, before I get to that question.
How is the physical security of the event?
It's in a different location as to what it was last year, so I don't know. There might be a few blog posts that float around that week that do a little assessment as to physical security, because the building that it is in, there are certainly ways to bypass the front desk. Not that you heard that from me. Yes, shout out. Congrats to those people that got first bloods, particularly Cameron, Kavan, and Daniel. You've actually been given little awards there, so you can show it off for the whole term. And you've also been given an award for being the outright leader on the scoreboard at some point through the term. The scoreboard is limited to 20 places, so maybe even through the term, if you're even on the scoreboard, it could be an opportunity to get an award. It's not worth marks. You don't have to do all of the challenges. In fact, don't do the challenges that are boring. If you're struggling or if they're just annoying you, you're going to get this resentment and you're going to Pavlov yourself to the point where like security and you'll just collapse out of sheer like, you know, you want to cry in the fetal position. It's not 100% mandatory, but I do want to incentivize people who get onto the challenges first, and also the people who are outright the best in the course at certain challenges. Now, best in the course, Hamish is going to hate me for saying this. Actually, is he here? No? Okay. Yeah, best in the course. Some people need to know when the challenges go live. The challenges all have unique IDs, which means you can make a GET request for the next ID, and if it comes back with you don't have permission to view that, then roll with it. And then if it comes back with, hey, here's a 200 response code, there's a new challenge up. So that's a way of doing polling to be able to learn when the challenges come up, to be able to try and attack them first. Be careful, do not run it once a second. We will rate limit you, and then you'll cry because the challenge will come up and you'll be not allowed to access it. There are ways of doing this properly. I will announce them as soon as I put them up most of the time, but sometimes you can just get in first. The other thing is special shout out to Kavan. Kavan? Are they here? Yes, well done. You were able to solve RCE before we fixed the makefile. So just by looking at the challenge itself, you were able to get a solution to that without it even working locally, which is just mind-blowing to me. That was awarded by Hamish, who is like very difficult to impress. So well done. Special shout out on that. Why is it called a first blood? I don't know, convention. It's the first time that somebody's been able to hack that particular system. It's a hack the box leftover, I think, but it probably goes further back than that. Okay, a little bit of admin. Again, apologies for the technical delays. As I said before, it's very difficult to make something that is just vulnerable enough that you guys can hack it without it just collapsing immediately. These exercises, people keep asking me, what are they worth? Well, they're not worth anything in and of themselves, but as 6841 students, we're expecting you to be technical across the term. So I'm expecting people to at least attempt some of these, and it'd be better if you can give me explanations as to why certain payloads work, why certain functions work, etc. But you are not expected to solve everything. In fact, if you don't know the content from past experiences, then you're probably not going to solve everything. The points that each challenge is worth is an indicator of how difficult I think it is worth. People will complain that it's like, oh, that wasn't a 150 point. Actually, I had 2 back-to-back emails, literally 30 seconds apart. One of them said, hey, you went way too fast. Like last week just made no sense. We need to slow it down. Please, like, build things up from the ground up. And then the very next email was, hey, this is just too slow for me. I've done this all in my undergraduate degree. I'm a master's student. I need something harder. So how do I cater to everybody? Like, I literally can't. So the points, some people are going to look at 150 points and go, yeah, this should have been 15 points. And somebody else is going to look at 150 points and go, I'm not even going to attempt that. That's okay. Learn at your own pace. This course is meant to be an introduction. What we're actually looking for are for you to justify, develop the security mindset, be able to reflect on challenges and problems that you've encountered. If you're looking to learn technical content, you'll have to do this course because it's a prerequisite, but then do COMP6443, 6445, and 6447. They're all amazing courses, and they're going to build on fundamentals that are brought in this. So yes, please be careful of your mental health. But in that said, please be careful. Don't be a dick, first and foremost. Nobody was able to remote code execute and then like delete the flag file, which is something that I was expecting. Don't do that. It's rude, it's mean, gets in the way of people. But if you get a remote code execution, you can read the flag and then you want to write like cat into Cameron was here. That's fun. You're not interfering with learning by doing that. Is there a question up there or are you just giggling? No, we're good? Okay. These vulnerabilities are real. The RCE one, the system one, like they do exist and they've fallen out of popularity, like I said last week, but then they've also come into popularity again. They do exist, they're kind of hard to find. You need the right tools, you need to know where to look. SQL injection is not out of popularity, and it's absolutely possible that you can take down entire infrastructure by running a specific tool on it. Please be careful. If you're not sure, ask me. And the answer will always be no unless you have explicit written permission from both the owners and the maintainers of the system. Please be careful. I have added the little picture there for a bit of context. Here are some real examples. Does anybody recognize any of these hacks? Was anybody pwned in any of these hacks? I was. Sony got me and Epic Games Store got me. Yep. Question?
Not a question.
Statement.
Yeah, statement. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I don't think the CDF sign-up thing is working because I'm not getting the confirmation emails.
Huh.
You don't need it. Just let's do it. Can you click on challenges?
Okay, so the ctfd.io site, I can't sign up to that.
Oh,
I'm getting an email.
you're in the wrong CTFD. Our CTF is ctfd.comp6841.xyz.
Okay, the login for that one works.
Login for that one works? Cool. CTFD is the tool that we're using to host our challenges. We have no actual affiliation with them, so don't hack the CTFD website. But that said, our infrastructure is in scope, so if you want to hack ctfd.comp6841.xyz, then by all means. Yes? I don't really care if you do the war games or not. I care if you're learning how to do them. So I want to see evidence that you're thinking about it and then being able to do it.
No, I mean like the other tasks, like commenting and researching the other logbook tasks.
Oh, can you get all the analysis marks by just doing the war games? If they're very good, then yes. It really depends again, like, I don't want to commit to yes, because I'd like to see some breadth of what you're doing. But at the same time, like if you're able to solve system and then get a Docker container escape and get onto the root file system, like you'd probably just skip this course and go from there. So I'd prefer you to do a little bit of everything, but if you're absolutely addicted to the war games for that week and you can write some really good technical analysis, then I guess you could probably get full marks for it. Yeah, so here's some examples of some real world hacks. All of these were from SQL injection vulnerabilities. Before I get into, again, content, I'll pause for a sec. Any questions about anything that I've spoken about thus far? Yes?
Did you just say something about Docker containers?
Yes.
And we are using Docker containers?
Who's we? I'm using Docker containers. Yeah. If you want to look at more details, then watch the recording. I'm not going to spill my secrets. Other questions? Okay. No, this is not literally 3311 in 4 slides. This is a bit of a meme against Jazz. What is a database? We're actually going to start here because, again, Those of you who already know it are going to tune out and just go and do your own thing. The quiz will be open till 3 in the morning again, so skip it. You'll be able to answer the questions. What is a database? It's a structured, usually, collection of data. You might have experienced them. Who's actually written and utilized a database in their courses? Yeah, who's never had to write an interface with a database? Yeah, okay, so there are some of you. Okay, so this is important that I start from low level. It's a structured collection of data. These lights are awful. Okay, that's better. What do? We store data in a database. Now, I mean, people are like, oh, yeah, of course you do. But like, what does that mean? Data gets stored in a database, but it means anywhere we store data, that is a database. So it doesn't have to be on a SQL server that's running on some other network. Like if you're just storing files to a local folder, that's your database now, and it absolutely counts. As long as you're interfacing with that database, there is a possibility you can introduce injection vulnerabilities. Why do we use them? Persistence across restarts. It's great to store things in memory, but once your server crashes, you've no longer got any data. I can't imagine having to rebuild the entirety of the Facebook user base because one server went down. We also use it because we can efficiently store and move data across and around. We can sort things. Databases are usually built so that they're more efficient and effective than storing things locally. Yes? You could. You could introduce an injection vulnerability, not necessarily SQL.
When you say interfacing, do you just mean interacting with the database and changing data, or is there a more technical definition of interfacing?
No, I mean just, yeah, the question there was like, what does interfacing mean? And all I mean by that is interacting with the database. Changing the data, moving things around, creating, deleting. Anytime that you contact the data, the very nature of utilizing a database means that there could be an injection point at somewhere along the chain. Not necessarily, but possible. Okay. What does a database look like? This is a UML diagram. Some of you might remember this in Shudder and Cry from 2511. That is an acceptable response. I also do not like these diagrams, but they are very useful. What does this database represent? Well, it represents the relationship that maybe a university system would have inside their program. So for example, if I'm trying to store people's marks, well, I have people, I have the professor, they have a salary, I have students, that both the professor and a student are people, usually. I went to the business school once. And then they have attributes and methods. So attributes are things that you can assign to certain tables, and methods are things that you can do with that data. So student number, I have a ZID, that would be my student number. Get seminars taken. Well, I want to know which programs and which courses this person has done so I can run a get seminars taken function on that. So effectively, I'm just laying out my data in a system that makes more sense for me and for the computer to be able to interface with. Probably, yes, the professor should probably have an ID. Yeah, but at that point, if both the student and the professor have an ID, the ID goes into the person category because it's an inherited trait. And I won't talk too much about inheritance or the relationship, one-to-many, any of that. If you want to know that, then I think 1531 touches on it, and then 2511 goes very heavily into detail with it. If you've ever written Java or C#, this sort of diagram might make sense. And if you hate yourself like I do and have written in C or C++ with structs, then again, might be similar. So what is SQL or SQL or Squilly? No, Squilly is injection. What is SQL? SQL is a special purpose language. There are a bunch of them. Microsoft SQL Server, I don't think I've seen anybody use that ever. Postgres is most commonly used. MySQL is commonly used as a setup. There's also SQLite, which I'm using at the moment. They allow you to interface with structured commands. So it's no good having structured data if you don't also have a structured way of interfacing with it. Imagine having every student under a course, under a university, and yet every time you wanted to open that file, you have to write your own function that goes through, checks each of those, and opens the file and moves down, right? So SQL is just a standard way of interfacing with SQL databases. Question?
What does structured mean exactly?
The question now is, what is structured? Databases like this have a design structure. The structure is set into the way that the database is built. And so if I wanted to insert cat into this database, it's going to be like, yo, what is a cat? I don't understand this. It's not a person. It's not a, well, it could be a student. It's not a professor, certainly. And a cat is not an address. So what is that? Structured databases, especially as they scale, tend to slow down, and you need to put different efficiencies and optimizations on. And they are very rigid in their structure, so you can't just insert whatever you want into them. Alternatively, there are non-structured databases which don't have a specific structure, and you can just start playing around with however you like. NoSQL databases is a category of databases that sort of parallel SQL, and ultimately what they are giant text files with different JSON written inside of them. And so I can insert whatever I want as long as it forms the JSON query correctly. So what is structured? It's a rigid design like this. There is no SQL injection, 6443 or 6843 content, not part of this course. If you want to know, ask someone who does 6843. Pause for recognition. And then, yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. But at the moment, we're focusing more on structured databases such as SQL. Yes, any questions on this? All right, this database, very simple. This database, oh, hang on. This database, not very simple. No, you're not meant to be able to read this. If you can, I am impressed at your eyes. I can barely read it from here. This is just a way of mapping out, again, different classes and the relationships between them and how they interact. In fact, it's a terrible diagram because it doesn't have arrows, it doesn't have methods, it doesn't have a lot of things that are missing, but databases tend to look like this. They get very large. And I'll talk about that in my tute. So yeah, they look very large. Going back a step, when I talk about structure, what is the way that we structurally interface with this structured database? We're using, effectively, a language which is SQL. It's syntactic semantic query language. Forget. Structured query language, even better. Thank you. What does this do? It creates a table. Well, a table is one of those things. It stores data in a structured manner. What does the table contain? It contains a name, an email address, and a phone number. And each of those things that you put into the database have a type. Obviously, a name needs to be text, a phone number needs to be, well, it doesn't need to be, it could be a string, but in this case, I'm storing it as an integer, and an email address needs to be text. Similarly, I can create the table address and go on from there. This is important. I need you to understand that, like, that's how SQL sort of interacts. Are there questions on that?
There should always be an ID when you're making those.
Yes. So somebody has done databases stuff before. There should be an ID. Every time that I create a new table, I need to uniquely allocate a single position. Otherwise, I can get duplicate data. Even if I want duplicate data, I need to be able to interface with the specific row individually, which means I do need an ID, even if I have duplicate copies. The data and an entry are two different things. I can have duplicate data. I shouldn't have duplicate entries. How you solve that is by having a unique key for every single thing that you insert. It's missing in this diagram. It's not in my demos. As in, it is there in my demos. Other questions on SQL? Yes?
Why is it always shouting?
Why is it?
Always shouting.
Always what?
Shouting.
Shouting? Well, it's doing that by convention, but no, it doesn't actually have to be. I learned even earlier today that SQLite supports non-shouty characters. So yeah, it's uppercase for control characters by convention, and then lowercase for data characters. Again, by convention. There's no strict requirement there. Here are some examples. Let's go through them. Select. Select something from a database. So say I wanted to select a person, I would say select everything from persons or people and the rest of the query. Insert. Self-explanatory. Inserts into a database. Update. Updates a field. Join. Connects two tables together so that you have one column that goes across tables. That will be useful later, especially in injection, but it's also very helpful when you're doing things like, well, for example, I do some fun things with AFL statistics just because I'm a nerd. You have players, and players play games. I need to join the particular player entry to the game that they played a lot of the time so that I get it all out in one go. Question? I said row? Did I say column? Oh, yes, I meant row. Yes. So yeah, join connects rows across tables. Put. What is the difference between put and insert? Question is for the reader. Put it there intentionally because, well, you'll work it out why. And delete. Delete is the important one. There usually are no protections on SQL databases. The protections are put in by programmers, which means if you write delete into production environment and the programmers didn't think anyone would, it will delete it. It will be gone. Be very careful writing delete into testing. SQL control. So you've got the commands. The commands usually come at the start. They need to tell the interpreter what we're trying to do, and then I don't want to do it on all of the data all at once, so I put some control statements on next to it. So for example, I want to select students from UNSW where they have taken security. Similarly, I can do and. I want to select students who are both enrolled, or select everything from students where they've taken security and they've taken 6447. And now I can do combinations like that. And or, similarly defined, limits the number of things that you return. So sometimes you have 1 million entries in a database and you just want the top 10. You know, select everyone from the CTFD scoreboard where limit 20. So just get me the top 20. In fact, that probably wouldn't work because I need an order by. Order by points scored, limit 20. So all of these are control characters. If you've never seen these before, I encourage you to set up your own little SQL database and start playing around with it and see what you can do with it. They're very powerful. I don't think SQL is Turing complete. Does anyone know? Buddy?
Depends on implementation, but yeah, they can be like PHP, SQL.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so some languages, some subsets of SQL are actually Turing complete. So, you know, somebody go and run Doom in SQL.
Supersets, not subsets.
Yes, you are correct. Supersets rather than subsets. Yeah, because SQL is the basics, and then MySQL might have some extra commands that aren't built into what we generally consider a SQL. Like is an interesting thing. Say I want to search for a published article that contains the word education. Well, I'm going to use the like command because it's probably easier to demo it. Like, you put a % at the start of the keyword and a % at the end, and the percents fill as if they were regex to basically be whatever. We'll get to a demo in a sec. Questions on SQL at the moment? Yes? What does put do? Put does something similar to insert. Almost got me. Timmy?
All this feels a bit like a scuffed programming language, or is it just me?
All of it feels like a scuffed programming language. Well, there's no way of branching from what I know. There's not really a way of assigning variables. You can make a query, but you then need a full programming language to make the query and store the result and then assign that to a variable. It is technically a programming language, but I wouldn't do it for anything outside of what it is useful for. In the same way I wouldn't use Java for anything because it's not useful for anything. So it has its uses, it has its purpose, but again, like if somebody wants their something awesome program to be, I am going to write scripts that will trigger an MS-1710 vulnerability in SQL, by all means, go ahead. Other questions? I thought I saw a hand move up the back there. Pardon me. Okay. Yes? Is regex in the SQL spec? I don't think regexes inherently are there. They have characters that will expand, like the % expands to any number of characters, including 0. But I don't think you could type like a Perl regex into a like statement and get something out. I'd be happy to be proven wrong because that would make some of my exploits a lot easier. But I don't think that's the case. OK, let's make a database. So I actually went and did this ahead of time. I did it ahead of time and then closed my terminal. Oh, don't open it in Vim. Same. OK, here's an example. I showed a little bit of code before, but here's something that I might want that actually goes into production. Say I'm developing a login system. Well, I need to store who's who. I need to store an ID, a unique ID. I need to store their username. I need to store their password. And I might need to store the permissions that they might have. So are they an admin? In my case, I am an admin. I believe that was the default admin password on Microsoft Windows 95 for a while. Sausage P, yeah. Because the internal code name was called Microsoft Pegasus. And so, yes. All right, so I've already had this question, and I'm kind of impressed that it came up so quickly. Should you store the passwords? No, never, ever store passwords. If you have to store passwords, use the best conventions, which are salted hashes using a cryptographically functional hash. What does that mean? We'll get to it later on in the course. At the moment, don't ever store passwords like this. It's awful. And secondly, if you can, don't even store passwords at all. There are ways that you can authenticate a web application using OAuth or SAML to Facebook. You've seen this before where you sign into WebCMS using your ZID. WebCMS doesn't store your password, allegedly. But it can sign in to your centralized thing. So same as you would sign into Moodle. Moodle doesn't have your password. Moodle is asking Active Directory, is this password correct? And then sending it back. So question first.
From what I remember, from the limited bit I know about it, it's like you're supposed to store the hashed password or something, so that if someone was to access your data, they can't see the unhashed password? Correct.
We will get to that in the course. It is a major component of the course, and Richard already started leading into it when he was talking about secrets on Tuesday. So expect more of this when we talk about it on Monday and Tuesday. To repeat that, yeah, don't ever store plain text passwords. The least you can do is store it as a hashed password, although even things like MD5 broken, don't ever use it. Question? Okay, what was primary key? What does primary key mean? In this case, primary key means that this value cannot be duplicated anywhere in this table. So each of my users have a unique ID, and that uniqueness is enforced by primary key. Tim?
Have you heard of the SSHFX extension on VS Code?
The SSHFX extension?
SSHFS extension on VS Code.
SSH file systems?
Yeah. It's an extension that stores your password in text.
Nice. When we get to talking about passwords and secrets, I'll pull up the plain text offenders registry. Yes, it's actually a thing where people have gone around and exposed themselves for storing passwords in plain text and then posting about it in public, like on Twitter, or sending people's passwords back in emails because they clicked the forgot password button. It happens. It should never happen. If a hacker gets in, they get all of the passwords. Please don't. Yes?
In the case of OAuth and SAML, where you're not storing the passwords, is the authentication server still storing the passwords or the hashes of the passwords?
In the case of OAuth and SAML, where you're not storing the passwords, yes, the authentication server still has to store something to compare against. So a password, for example, the modern process at the moment is when you sign in, they take that, they hash it with a salt, they store the salted hash into the database, and then every time you log in, you send the password, they take the hash it with the salt that they've stored in the database, and compare the outputs. And if the outputs match, you've got the same password, you've got it right. The advantage there is you've outsourced it, because yes, if you get hacked, your customers are not.
So does that mean that you're centralizing the important information?
Single point of failure. Yes. At the moment, everything you do at UNSW is centralized by a single password. How do you guys feel about that? Counter argument, would you rather entrust password authentication to effectively the lowest bidder of students doing COMP6900? And which one would you rather? I trust personally Microsoft more than I could trust any of my students. And I don't trust Microsoft very much at all. Was there a question up the back there? Yes? Yeah, okay, so we're getting into the point where we're now into Monday and Tuesday lectures where Richard is talking about the abstracts. Is it better because people are probably just going to use the same password all of the time anyway? That's a psychological debate. Like if you do enough training, then maybe not. But questions for another time. Feel free to discuss it in your tutes.
Is it a password manager also a single point of failure?
Is a password manager a single point of failure? Yes. Again, later on in the course, we will talk about risk assessment and trying to do, my job isn't to tell you yes or no, do or don't do something. My job is to give you the education that when you make those decisions, they are justified.
Question, isn't that subject to the infrastructure of the password manager? Do you have a password manager that's like uTorrent, and it's like a very much a multiple point of failure thing?
I have yet to see a password manager that uses a distributed system.
I'll build one. Sounds great.
There's your Something Awesome project. Yeah, I've got no problem with that. Coming back to SQL, have we got questions about the actual content of this lecture as opposed to general statements about passwords?
Is the command drop tables a real one? I swear I've heard it somewhere.
Is the command drop tables a real one? Yes. Let me pull up. The majority of you will know exactly where this is going. For those of you who don't, here is the best website on the internet. Yes, now you can see how quickly things can go badly in production environments if SQL injection is found. I have also seen one where somebody had a database schema that was not well established, and so they were denied a job because they already had a Jonathan working at the company. Okay, other questions? SQL. Yeah. Absolutely, all of the time. I mean, yeah, like security is about raising the bar so it's harder for an attacker to get in than the resources that they could get out. Is there something else that could go wrong? Well, yeah, the attacker could go and guess the admin password and dump the tables that way for the SQL the database connection. The admin could break into the website and install some malware on the actual website source code so that every time somebody logged in, before sending it to the database, they sent it to another server. Like there's always a way that can go wrong. In theory, when connecting to a database, yeah, you could have corrupt data that eventually just takes down the entire network. Like you could have bit flips or non-error correcting memory and have it go down that way. There's always something else that can go wrong. The reason I picked the topics that I have for 6841 is to give you a diverse understanding of a lot of different vulnerabilities and target the most common ones that do the most damage. So highest impact, highest likelihood, highest risk. Other questions on SQL? Okay, going back to my slides. Oh, yes, okay. I was going to do this. So in my terminal, whoop, flag.txt, I have a database already. I can delete the database. Then I can create a new database using SQLite. SQLite is a very simplistic SQL, I don't want to say server, program that allows you to interface with SQL and store it as a SQL database. So SQLite 3. And then I can take the schema that I just had SQL data.sql, put it into there, and now I can go SQLite 3, light 3, bruh. Oh, doing it that way. And then db.SQLite 3, and now I can do SQL. Select everything from users, bruh. It is users. It's probably because when I ran that, yeah, I didn't tell it where it was going. Okay, cool. I'm glad that worked. Yay. All right, so I have my users now, and of course I can query them however I want. Say all I wanted was the username, so I'd select username from users. And that would just get username. So the star doesn't mean everything in the table. The star means which column do you want to select. And then I've also got select username from users where isAdmin is equal to true. I've got just this one, and my projector is too far down. Yeah, and you get just that username.
Can you select more than one column?
Sorry?
Can you select the user or
The question, can I select more than one column? Yes, username and password, for example. Yes. Note there, I'm also querying, so I'm selecting, but I'm also querying on a column that I haven't selected. So isAdmin is a column in the table, and I can query that, but it doesn't get returned by the select statement. Say I'm logging in, and somebody has given me a username and a password. What might I do? Well, I need to select. What am I selecting? Okay, so select username and the password. Where? Oh, sorry, yes. Where what? Equals, I don't know, whatever it is. Right? What might be an issue with that? You're not checking the password. So if somebody gives me a username and the wrong password, I'm going to get their username and password. Okay, this is a structured language, so we've got to be specific. Computers will do exactly what you tell them. Most of that will be wrong. So I don't even need the username and the password, right? Like usually I just need a session ID. So I want to get the ID from users where username is equal to the username given. In this case, I'm going to say I wrote Trash Panda. And password is equal to, I don't know, test. Say I'm not actually doing it. Oh, Trash Panda is a string. What? Cool, gives me nothing back. If I get my password correct, it gives me the ID of the user with that username and password. If I go back to my slides, that is querying the database. What is SQL injection, or SQLI? Before I get to that question here.
if we want more complicated Boolean logic statements for the where part, can we put like brackets?
Yes, you can put brackets. In fact, I highly encourage it because some SQL languages will read right to left or left to right. Some will read brackets first. Everyone will read brackets first. Some will do ands before ors. So brackets always, remove any of the inconsistencies between languages. Yeah?
It's not really a question, but I did one CTF regarding sequence injection, and I had to put like 101 to get like...
Yep, we'll get there. Yes. Is that a question? Nope. All right, I see everything. Okay, so what is SQL injection? Well, I've just shown you how to query a database. What happens if somebody enters a username that has one of the control characters in it, like a semicolon? Or it says select. We'll take a break so I can fill up my water bottle. And then we'll come back to this, but take 5. Stretch your legs, do as you need. You can hear me, yeah. Just making sure this one's on. Okay. Testing, testing. Oh. Is it on this one? Is it on this one? It's on this one. Testing. Okay, let's get back into things because I don't want to hold you past 8 again. All right, so I left you with the question of what is SQL injection? And I'm just going to go through a couple of examples. Video Ninja, what about it? Oh, do I need to refresh or I need to reset the link? I don't want to do that. Select screen to share. This one, and hit share. It's the same link. Okay. Technical difficulties. Okay, I left you with the question, what is SQL injection? We're going to run through some payloads now. Were there any questions that came up during the break? Wonderful. I expect everyone to get 100% on all of the SQL injection challenges this week because you already know everything. Oh. We don't know what we don't know. It's an interesting place to be. Hopefully we know what we don't know by the end of the course, and we know that we know everything and can absolutely ace the course in the final exam. This is a tool developed as a Something Awesome project by a student in the course last year. Nicholas Langford, yes. Brilliant, brilliant tool. In fact, this is one of the tools that's currently being used by the Department of Education to teach high school students. That is how far and wide your Something Awesome project can go. I expect very grand scale things. And Nick has since continued development on this tool. I believe he intends to include certain CTF challenges and expand it to different vulnerabilities, but ultimately what it allows us to do is very cleanly and nicely see what a SQL payload looks like down here. So what I've done, this is the payload, and we were talking about this before. This is how I would query, for example, a user login. So I'm selecting, just give me everything. I don't really care about which, like the username or the password. Just give me everything from that row from users, where the username equals the first thing I sent, and the password equals the second thing I sent, and then I've also sent 2 things in the body text. So you can pretend that the body text is the form request body that gets sent to the back end, and the top piece is the hard-coded SQL question that comes up that gets sent to the database. Question?
How come, like when you say speech mark, $1, speech mark, how come that doesn't just become a string that just has $1?
Because, okay, yeah, I should use double quotes if I was using bash syntax. In this example, and just for this tool, $1 and $2 are being substituted out by what I've put into the bottom section here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's doing a search and replace first. If you actually hard-coded this, then you would be sending, yes, find me anyone whose username is $1 and the password is $2, and you'd probably get nothing back. In this case, no, $1, $2 are just examples, and I'll shift them and move them around as we go. I might send 3 things, or we'll go from that. But in this case, it's just take the first thing, substitute it where you see $1, and the second thing, substitute it where you see $2. And what it allows us to do is see this color-coded, which I think is important. It actually helps with being able to visualize what's actually going on. So presented with this, and with the knowledge that things like single quotes, double quotes, the asterisk sign, a semicolon, and I'll tell you a little hash or double dashes, because the hash or the double dashes indicate comments, you might be inclined to send certain usernames or passwords with control characters in them. And if it's not set up correctly, that's exactly what happens. Oh, it hasn't got comments enabled. Let's try a single quote. Right, now it's saying select everything from users where username equals trash panda, and then nothing. This is not one string. These are 2 strings with nothing in between them. I can show you that by doing this. Right, 2 strings, nothing in between them, that will cause a SQL error, and it won't actually load or do anything. In the same way, if I put double quotes, well, this is a control character, but the control character is in between single quotes, so it's treated as a string. That's fine. The only control character that matters here is the thing that allows us to break out of the single quotes, which is a single quote. After that single quote, I can now type whatever I'd like, and it will be treated as SQL control characters. This is another example of mixing data and control. I have the data of my username, and I could potentially put control into my username and start taking control of the application. Yes?
If you put a semicolon within single quotes, is that treated as control character? Or is it?
No. You have to break out of the control characters first. Yeah. Cool. So that's going to throw an error because test is not a command character. But I could do something else. Or, one. Why? Like why? Or, quote, 1 equals 1. Right, what does this say now? Select everything from users where the username is Trash Panda or 1 equals 1 and password equals sausage bee. When does 1 equal 1? Always. So select everything from the table users where the username is Trash Panda or always. And now we have a control character that will get me everything out of the database. An exploit that will get me everything out of the database. So my answer here, or 1 equals 1, and then it really doesn't matter what I put in my password because it's always going to do that, with the exception of some SQL languages that will prioritize ands over ors, which was your question, I saw it coming.
Which one's processed first?
Yes. There is a way to get out of that, and I don't know if this tool will demonstrate, but or 1 equals 1, well, I can just terminate the statement. So I can put a colon, quote, and then cool. Now the rest of it is a comment that doesn't actually matter. Question?
What if you comment the rest of the query like after Trash Panda, the first quotation mark?
So what if I comment here instead? Okay, so Trash Panda, close my statement, put a comment in, and now I'm just getting Trash Panda. Cool. What might be an issue here?
You can comment out the rest of the code and essentially set the password to whatever you want.
Set the password to whatever you want would be a very sophisticated attack. You could comment out the rest of the code, absolutely, but setting the password is a follow-up thing that we might be able to get to.
You're no longer checking the password.
I'm no longer checking the password. I'm just getting the result. And if I'm no longer checking the password, well, I'm going to log in as admin. And now it doesn't matter if I have the right password for admin. I'm in because the SQL query will return me admin. That is all the backend or the database sees. Select all from users where username equals admin, and then some comment from the developer.
If this is such a simple exploit, why is there not protection built into the language itself?
If this is such a simple exploit, why is there not protections built into the language itself? How do you know? How do you know if they actually intended to break out? Because remember, the database and the database server doesn't actually see if this is coming from a request or not. This is just a command given by the programmer. So this stuff here, well, the database doesn't know that this is a separate thing input by a user. It all gets compiled into a single string, and that string gets sent to the database. And the database just does what you tell it to. It doesn't know if part of it has come from the user or part of it has come from the developer. It just does the thing.
Lots of SQL implementations have parameterized queries, which do sidestep this problem.
Cool, you've jumped to about 40 minutes ahead. We'll get there. Yes, you are absolutely correct there. Was there a question over this side? I thought I saw a hand. Not only do I see everything, I see more than everything. Yes? Why do we need the comments at all? If I remove the comment, from the right place. how it's getting rendered now is it's two statements back to back, and the second one just doesn't make any sense.
Why do we need to give the password, but we can just say where username equals that? Why are we asking inputting the password as well?
Well, when you go to log on, the developer is expecting you to give them a username and a password, because if you don't give them the password, then there's no way of validating. Yeah, it's basically a way of checking secrets. Let's do this. Where did my terminal go? Why? Oh, it's up there. Quick, get it before it runs away again. Actually, you guys don't need to see this part. Oh, not the right one. I want localhost 3000. Here's an example. I can do that, and then I can bring up my terminal. I can do that. Okay, I'm running an application now. This is a web application. All it's doing is asking for a login. Same way I would approach this in the real world. I would firstly get permission. And then secondly, I would figure out what this application is doing. Luckily for us, I have the application's console log right here. Username, test, password, test, whatever. Login. Error, username or password incorrect. And thankfully, this application tells us what it saw. In the same way we just did, I'm going to try and remove the password checking. So how would I do that? Well, I've already got test there. What else? Single quote. Or 1 equals 1.
Or single quote, the number 1, single quote.
Like that?
Do you need the single quotes, or can you just treat them like, will SQL read, if you just have a 1 without the single quotes, will SQL read as an integer?
Okay, so the question is, do you actually need the single quotes here? And the answer is, it really depends on how cleanly you want this to exit. In the same way that when you're doing a buffer overflow, you're jumping to a return address, you just want to run that thing, and then you don't really care how it ends the program. It can segfault, it can do a backflip, it doesn't really matter. Right here, most of the time, all I want to do is log in, but sometimes I want it to exit cleanly. So if I just want it to log in, then doing 1 equals 1, then terminating and ending with a comment, that will work, because that's actually what happens. But sometimes it doesn't let me inject a character like the semicolon character. So in that case, I would go test, breakout, or 1 equals 1, like that. And now, the hard-coded quotation mark that is from the backend that gets sent to the database is now part of the injection that I've just made. And so this is a whole statement without a quotation, without a comment, without a semicolon, without any indication that there's something malicious going on here. And this would be a clean exit to a SQL statement. So it kind of depends on how you want to approach it. Most of the time you just do this. Most of the time I would add a semicolon and a comment, but follow-up question to that, how do you protect against it? Don't say your answer yet. Yes?
Sorry, why is there an error message on the screen?
Why is there an error message on the screen? Correct. No password provided, probably. Let's give it a password.
Is it because it's the or and end situation where it's reading one before the other and something's not happening?
Okay. I didn't know this tool would do this, so I'm learning in real time. When I've got a regex, all right, so, oh man, I wish I had Shakespeare's entire works on this computer. Yeah, eventually I'll get there. When you're using grep, for example, grep does regex matching, and this is going to be a little bit confusing to those who haven't done regex, but if I use grep, there's a difference between get everything and get everything unless it terminates early. So for example, if I wanted to pull out all of the paragraphs of a HTML document, right, I could go like this, P, P. And what that will do is grab everything in between two P control statements from HTML. And in reality, what this would do is it would find the first P and go all the way to the end of the document and start working backwards until it found the second P. By adding this question mark character to the regex, it's called lazy matching. And what it does now is it finds the first P and then goes until it finds something that tells it to stop, which is the second P at the end here. So it depends on how your quotation marks are being rendered. Are you going for the biggest thing, or are you going for until it exits? And in that case, where's my mouse? Up there. Please. This is doing maximum matching. The reason it's not trying to catch all the way up to this one is because there's password would probably be hard-coded somewhere in the renderer or the interpreter. So in this case, it's not going to work. I do actually need to terminate and add a comment at the end. Yeah? Oh, yeah, yeah. Point still stands. /p should have been at the end there. But yeah, it's the difference between match everything or match everything until you get a termination. Yes?
Could you copy and paste your all one is equal to one for the password as well? And then...
Like this?
Yeah.
No termination? Yeah. Nice. Look, web applications are weird at the best of times when you're designing them to be intentionally vulnerable, and sometimes the thing that's actually rendering the code is not the thing that's outputting what the code thinks it's seeing. So the colors could be different to what's actually being rendered. It's a really good tool for very simple demos. I don't know how sophisticated we're going to get. Yeah, one thing at a time. If it doesn't make sense, try and have a think about what's going on in the back ends, not explicitly what's being put out by the colors. I do wish Nick's tool would actually interface back to a genuine web application. But if I want pretty colors to make it easier for the introductory parts, then I can't do that. OK, you had a statement here of, oh, my question was how do you protect against it? What's a really cheap and dirty way? If you're a contractor that's been hired on for the least amount of money, what's a way that you might be able to fix this? Interface? Oh, but the interface is here, right? Like username and password is right there. So this is the web application that I'm seeing. Right? I can't directly access the terminal. In this case, I'm just seeing it because I'm the one running it. Is there a... Just don't let them put those characters in. Parentheses in syntax. Let's see what this does. Ah, yes. OK. That's not quite the answer. Yes, don't let them put those characters in. SQL is really weird because sometimes you can send characters that get represented as certain characters. In the same way that the buffer overflow challenge is, you can send bytes and it gets represented as characters, for example. And so SQL also has that. I can't think of what they are off the top of my head. But for example, it depends on the renderer. In this case, it probably won't do it. But if anybody knows URL encoding, thank you. OK, so it's not being rendered as that. But I don't know if I'm doing a URL decoding on it in the first place, and it's doing it that way. So stopping them from using those characters is a good way of stopping the very basics of happening.
What does %LT mean?
Oh, sorry. When you're trying to write HTML, sometimes you want to write certain characters like the less than sign and it not be part of the tag that says this is a paragraph or this is a heading. I want explicitly this character to come up in data.
It's like how if you want to write \n in your, or like /n in your string.
Yes.
You have to put a slash.
You have to put the backslash to escape the backslash that's escaping the n. Yeah. Yeah.
I actually have a question. How did, when you put test or 1 equals 1 in both username and password, how did it work actually? Because shouldn't the password and username be different?
The highlighting is just.
Yeah, I think the highlighting's broken.
I think it highlights what you actually, because it's coming from the actual server, right? I think it's just highlighting what you entered into the text fields.
Oh, maybe that's what it is. Yeah. Is it? I thought.
I think so.
Because didn't we?
It just highlights what you
Ah, you are correct. Yes, this is just highlighting what I put in. Where did it go? This is a better example of where it's actually rendering it as SQL. I'm sure if we got in contact with Nick, he'd be happy to host it somewhere so that we can utilize it so you guys can learn and play around in a sandbox. I won't promise that, but maybe that's something we'll do. Okay, well, one of these methods is we're going to put parentheses around them, which means now if I break out with that or 1 equals 1 statement, or 1 equals 1, we've got username, test, or 1 equals 1, and it goes through, but then this bracket doesn't match exactly what we've put in. Who said that? Yes, you're hiding behind your laptop. Yeah, absolutely. So surely you can put a bracket in. Please? No? Is there something obviously wrong with this that I'm just not seeing?
Could you put the close bracket?
Could you put the after the 1 equals 1?
You gotta put instead of or it should be and.
Because there the 1 equals 1 and password is in one bracket, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it work if you made it or and then put the closing parentheses after the 1 equals 1?
One sec. CD, OneDrive, demos, ls, CD, ls, cats. What was that? Put a double comment where, sorry? Like that? I got to change back to an or? I mean, it should be commented. That might actually be the issue. And I don't know for sure.
You can press or 1 equals 1, then
Yes, there was no test. So, all right, the goal of that there, just to elaborate, when we did the first one, what was happening is I was looking for test or 1 equals 1. So I was just looking for anything that returned. In the other case, what we did was we looked for test and then just commented out the password so that I wasn't checking the password. I was still trying to log in as test. By changing test to admin, I've now bypassed the password check and then been able to log into admin. Why did it work in the first one and not the second one? It's because most of the time, the admin is the first thing that gets put into the database. And so returning everything and grabbing the first result will give you the admin. This is interesting. Yes, you can stop them from putting in the characters. Sorry, question?
I was wondering, because like I think for SQL, if you do a percent sign that like matches any string, so like what if you did the percent sign as the...
All right, I will humor. Do you know?
I think it's the percent sign, like that matches any string, right?
Okay, so the percent sign, if I go back to here, the percent sign works well for, say that one. Right, it's still being treated as a character, so we do need to escape it. How you escape it, like that, and now it's a character, and that character represents 0 or more characters. So in this case, what I would do is username equals admin, or the equal sign will treat the percent as a character, not as a wildcard. So I want to use like, or username like that. And now I'm just going to get the first username. So the percent represents a wildcard. It says grab 0 or more characters. Where username equals admin, well, maybe we're not looking for admin, or username is like percent, that just grabs everything. Okay. Question first?
Shouldn't you do something to the password as well?
In this case, I've commented it out. No, I haven't. I'm just grabbing everything that looks like username. And then and password, the and is coming before the or, coming after before. Order of operations means that this might work, yes. It probably won't, you are correct. You should do something with the password like commented out. But order of operations, there's a possibility this will work. Question up the back first, yeah? Correct, yes, it's probably useful to use the like syntax because not everyone calls the admin user admin. Yeah, okay. But it's the first thing in the database. Yes. Yes. And where do you work? No, don't.
In this case, it's still a valid like statement because we are using the original closing speech mark from username equals whatever, right?
Yes, it's still a valid statement, but we're still checking the password that means. So not necessarily will this work. It will grab the first thing from the database, but then it'll do a password comparison. Or it'll find admin.
Yes, depending on the order of operations. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to comment, or if you want to get rid of the password check, we in our payload we'd put we'd escape, so we'd put a
Yeah. One note, I'm putting, sorry, the test should go after double dashes. I'm putting a space and then a string at the end there because some SQL server, I say SQL server, some programs that offer SQL expect a comment, they will strip the white space. And the comment is only valid if there's a space after the comment sign, which is the double dash. So if it strips the white space, it removes the last thing and then sees double dash and end of line, which no longer treats that as a comment. So what I'm doing is I'm adding dash dash space test so that it doesn't strip out any of the problems that is happening. It's just by convention. I've encountered it in web apps when designing some of the challenges. You don't have to, but if it doesn't work, try doing that.
Yeah, I have one. The question is that how does the last part, how did that work actually? Because to me it's more like just putting username as all those strings there, and you're putting password as test. That's how I see it in the terminal. So I'm unsure how.
Yeah, sorry, the terminal's not rendering what the backend sees. The terminal is just putting what we put in there as red.
Yeah, but how does it allow you to bypass to admin?
Because it's only seeing admin and then terminating the string and adding a comment. If I put this into the other thing, Control A, V, this gets actually rendered correctly. So it's just the markup that's having an issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a point over here, like don't allow for control characters, and there's always a way around allowing for control characters depending on the SQL language and interpreter and all sorts of things. But realistically, what we care about, like if they can break out, then they can break it, right? That's fine. What we care about is if they can actually hack it and get information out of it. And the only way you can get information out of it is to enter command characters, right? We've been using or, and, test, right? Sometimes you're able to do things like, if I change this back, admin, or actually here. Sometimes that's a possibility. And now instead of the first command getting the results, you get the second command results. So you're not even, maybe I could be searching for, select, let's do this properly. Select all from comments where blog title equals that, and I don't even need a second thing. Right, and I enter this, blog title equals, I don't know, hello, world, and then select star from users. Well, if this renders iteratively, it's going to get the first thing, and then see we've got to get something else and throw out the first thing. And now in your blogs, like you'll actually get a presentation of a page where all the comments are a username and a password. Yes?
So does that mean that for the first query, it would just kind of like get out a block called hello world, and then straight away in the web, it just suddenly shows like all the usernames and passwords?
Yes, it depends on the language and the settings. In this case, it could just give you hello world and just return comments as usual and forget about the second thing. It's also entirely possible that it just forgets about the first thing because we don't want it anymore. There's a new SQL statement. Run that one instead. So what we care about are these control things. Some of the solutions here are just we get rid of the control characters. So anytime we see select and from or ands, we just strip them from the string. Is there a way to bypass that?
Make control characters, but split them with control characters?
Perfect. Make control characters and split them with control characters. Hey, there's a select, strip it out. And what's left is select. Yes? Didn't Google die to one of these? Probably. I don't know exactly, but that would not surprise me at all.
Can't you defend against this by just running the process again and again and again to load control characters?
You can, but what if I generate a string that requires it 1,000 times, and I send this 1,000 times a second to your website? Now, instead of just responding to 1,000 requests a second, you're also querying the database 1,000 times a second. So it costs a lot of resources to be able to strip and manipulate strings like this. Yeah, was there another question? No? Yes?
Escape all quotes that are entered.
Can you escape all quotes?
Yeah.
How?
Every quote that gets entered into the input just escapes. It's like a backslash, and then they can never terminate the string.
Okay, so every
Single or double quote escapes.
Okay, so every single quote and double quote, we escape it, right? Which would be in the backslash, right? And then in the back end, every time I see a backslash, well, the next character is no longer a control character. We're treating it explicitly as data. Well, what happens if I do this? F. Right? And the solution is, well, okay, we just strip out all those characters and the characters that come after it. Well, if I've got 3 characters like that, how do you do it pairwise? And then do you do it from the front or from the back? And which one comes out first? You can get around that. And then some of the solutions is like, all right, well, just don't allow any time you see a backslash, we're just going to remove that. And I might be able to get around it in a different way. I think the point here is that blacklists don't work. Yes?
Can we just, like, before we execute the query, we make the string that, like the input becomes a string, so we don't let them.
Yes. So the question there was, can we tell the program to explicitly say that $1 is data? Do not ever treat it as control. Instead of substituting this as a string, in fact, I'm going to give you the string and then the parameters after the string so that the database knows that this is a string and these are data pieces. Don't treat them all as control. And that's what the person up the back was saying. Constructed queries is exactly what we're talking about. So I'll come back to my slides. Right, what is SQL? Injection time, common attack vectors. We have login forms, user details, search queries, comments, user generated. Basically anywhere you've got data. Anytime you take in data from a user, you should always treat it as malicious for SQL injection purposes, but also many others. Injection points aren't always obvious. Here is a classic example that I had, which I am probably going to use in web apps. Hamish, take notes. I don't actually need to send a string. My cookie is base64 encoded. So when I have logged in, the web server gives me a cookie, and the way that it keeps track of who is interacting with it is by that cookie. How it tells who owns that cookie? Well, it takes the cookie from me every time I make a request. It decodes the cookie, and it puts it into a select statement and finds out what user is sending it. So I can take my payload, which, if they're removing backslashes and single quotes and double quotes from many of the cookies, sure, but it then gets decoded. And if it's decoded to a vulnerable or to an exploit payload, this is going to work.
Sorry, what does that mean? I didn't get that.
Okay, cookies in a web server. Basically, every time I interface with a computer, I don't want to have to send a login form every single time. So I log in, and the web server gives me a cookie. A cookie is just a little piece of data that says, send this to me, and every time I see this, I'll know it's you. Cookies can be implemented in many different ways. In this case, what I'm sending them is their own session ID back to them as a base64 encoding. Not their session ID, their user ID. So I had my user ID in my, here, ID 1234, right? So I know who's interfacing with this because when they logged in, I told them you are number one. Every time you make a request, tell me you are number one, and I will treat that as if you're this person, right? But instead, like the cookie was given to me. I don't need to send the exact same cookie across. I can modify my cookie however I like. So in this case, I might say cookie equals 1 or 1 equals 1 and just get me the first result from the payload that's on the slides. Query statement, select all from users where user ID equals whatever the user just told me it is. Now, I often don't want my cookies to be very obvious as to what they are. They want to be some form of encoding of the data. So in this case, I've used base64 encoding, which is just converting everything into 64 characters, compressing it a little bit. I don't think that's the right terminology, but you get what I mean. Just converting it to a base64 string. That way, if somebody modifies with it and it doesn't decode, I have an indicator that somebody's modified it. But in this case, it's still my cookie. So I can take the base64 encoding, decode it, figure out what it is, take a payload, re-encode it, and send it back to the server.
So when it's decoded on the server, you name it something else.
Correct. And now the server has to decode it and assume it that way. Yes? How would you protect against that? Web apps content. The short answer is sign your cookies. The long answer is see you term 1. Was there another question here? No? Yeah? Yeah? Yes, there are way more bigger problems than just what I'm doing. Because yes, there is no signature here, which means say I've logged in as user number 3, I can just convert it to user number 1. I don't even need to do a SQL injection. I can just bypass it completely. Yeah, don't ever do this. Like I have written deliberately bad code. This is one reason why, like, if I push this into production, none of you are going to learn SQL injection. You're going to learn how to modify your cookies. Okay. Common SQL protection methods. We spoke about this before. Just get rid of these particular words. Server will detect it. Select star from users would become star users. Blacklists don't work. Here's an example as to how. The first one, change the case. Some people look explicitly select. It's always in caps. Well, no, it's not. If you send it in lowercase, SQL will understand it. So people are like, oh, I'll check if it's uppercase or lowercase. And I just mix case it. And now I've broken in. Comments. A slash star, star slash, same as what it is in C. It is a comment that goes across multiple lines, or it can be put in the middle of a line. The backend sees that and goes, yep, that's a comment, get rid of it. And it just strips it out completely. And now you've got select instead of select. String concatenation, concat is built into some MySQL or some SQL servers. It's not going to see select, it's going to see cell and ect. That's fine. Concatenate the two, database runs it, we're broken. Strip bypass, I just showed you that one before. Select ect, my favorite. I love this one. Bad examples. Okay, so here's where we get into constructed queries, which a couple of people pointed out. Constructed queries are basically saying, instead of me just giving you a long string and treating that as the backend telling the database what to do, the backend is now going to say, this is the code, and I hard code that. Here are the data points that I need you to understand. And so the backend will say, all right, this is code, this will always be code. I know these are data points, I can't treat these data points as code, we're going to separate them out. This is the modern implementation of reversing that mixing data of control. We have control, data. Cursor.execute, this is written in Python. Cursor is the thing that is interfacing. Execute just means run this code. If you do it like the top one, your constructed query doesn't work because it's going to be substituted before the backend gets it. Same as the second and third and fourth. All of these do not work. The Python will interpret it and send it through as a string before the backend receives it. The correct way to do it is down the bottom here. Select admin from users where username equals %s. Python will send that explicitly as a string, and the backend will have to reinterpret it. Same as the next one down, you can put it as % and then tag like what your strings actually mean and indicate. Don't do the top, do the stuff on the bottom. More sophisticated attacks. I did kind of mention this. Second order SQL injection, and where I mentioned it was back here. Here. User-generated uploads, file names and video titles. You'll be able to find a lot of videos on YouTube these days that are titled things like quote or 1 = 1. And it's not because YouTube is vulnerable. It's because when you then embed a YouTube video into your own site, it's possible you're not escaping the title of that YouTube video. And so the attack isn't on YouTube, it's on the sites that are loading in YouTube videos. This is what we call a second order attack because you're going 2 orders down. Yes, there are third order attacks. It's turtles all the way down. Blind SQL injection. I was very kind of to give you an error. What happens if you try to log in and it just fails? That's what we call blind SQL injection. You can't see the code, you can't even see that it fails. Sometimes when you log in, it'll give you a 401 if the password doesn't exist, a 401 if the user doesn't exist, a 403 if the password is wrong, and it will tell you certain things. Blind SQL, you get nothing. All it does is return you back to the login screen. How do you bypass that? See you in term 1. Okay, that's all I have. The quiz is open. It should be. It should have opened at 7:45. I will pull that up onto the board now. Jokes. I will just give you the string because WebCMS will not let me upload images. Regardless, yeah, it is on Moodle. You should be able to get to the drop-down. Regardless, you really shouldn't be scanning QR codes anyway. Like, it's a problem. You don't know where they're going to go to. One of these days, I'm going to host a website, and all it does is install a Bitcoin miner on the JavaScript. So anytime you load a page, I'm just mining Bitcoin on all of my clients. Hey?
That's better than you using my speakers personally.
Better than using your speakers? Yeah?
If anybody autoplays a video on the website, I want to kill them.
Oh, yeah, just straight out. Yeah. Yeah. Sure, I had something else to show. I can't remember what it is. All right, I don't want to take up too much of your time, though. Remember, this is here. And secondly, the secEDU conference. Please check it out. If you do want to show off your Something Awesome project because you think it's incredible or you think it's got really high potential or you just want to show off, then by all means submit your application at the form. We had some awesome things last year. We had some not awesome things that just turned out to be really awesome when they were presenting it, like they had the enthusiasm. So it doesn't need to be unique or you don't need to think it's spectacular. We will think it's spectacular regardless, so please come along. And yeah, I hope to see you all there. Next week, just a reminder, next week there are no tutorials. There will be help sessions on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We will have a lecture. I will be at B-Sides. The lecture will be run by Hammond Pierce, who is a hardware hacker. He's got a bunch of really cool electrical engineering and circuit board demos to show off, and he will go through how hardware hacking can influence software vulnerabilities. See you all next week in the Monday and Tuesday lectures. Yeah.